welcome to the Deep Dive. You're here because you want to understand the forces shaping our world, and today we're tackling a big one, a presidential executive order from February 19th, 2025. This order set up something called the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE for short, with a mission to, well, shake up federal regulations.
That's right. And it's definitely more than just moving desks around in D.C. It really signals a potential fundamental shift in how the federal government looks at its own rules.
Right.
And for you, someone maybe navigating your career, thinking about the future, understanding this could be, well, pretty important for seeing what changes might be coming down the pike.
So our goal today is to really break down this executive order, pull out the key bits, the stuff you need to know.
Exactly. Get straight to the core of it.
Okay, let's dive in then. Section 1. It lays out the purpose, right? It talks about focusing enforcement on regulations directly backed by federal laws. What's the thinking there?
Yeah, the core idea, it's pretty clearly stated. They talk about wanting to reduce what the order calls an overbearing and burdensome administrative state.
Okay.
And also restoring the constitutional separation of powers. So the thinking is regulation should flow directly from laws Congress actually passed.
Like trying to draw a clearer line between what Congress decides and what agencies do.
Precisely. It leans towards, a stricter reading of agency authority, less filling in the blanks, maybe.
Which could mean, well, challenges to rules that aren't super explicit in the original law.
Exactly. And that has potential ripple effects, everywhere. Environment, business, tech.
Okay, so that's the philosophy. Section 2 then gets into the mechanics, how they actually plan to do this review.
Right. Section 2 is where the process really kicks off. It orders the heads of all federal agencies to review all regulations under their control.
All of them. Wow. And they have to do it fast, right?
Very fast, within 60 days.
60 days. That sounds incredibly ambitious for that scope.
It is. It's a very tight deadline, and they're looking for specific things.
Okay, what kind of regulations are they targeting, which it's flagged?
Well, the order lists 7 specific categories. The first couple are focused on the Constitution.
Right.
So regulations that might be unconstitutional or raise, serious constitutional questions, like does the federal government even have the power to regulate the specific thing?
Okay, like overstepping authority.
Yeah, or based on what they call unlawful delegations of legislative power. Think of it like Congress just vaguely telling an agency, go regulate this, without clear instructions.
So if the agency fills in too many details, that could be flagged. Makes sense with the separation of powers goal. What else?
The third one is interesting. Regulations not based on the best reading of the law.
Best reading?
Yeah.
What does that imply? Like a very literal interpretation?
It suggests that, a preference perhaps for a narrower, more direct link between the specific words in the statute and the regulation itself.
Okay. And the fourth?
That targets regulations on significant social, political, or economic issues that don't have, clear, explicit backing in the law. So broader rules with wide impacts.
So again, looking for that really solid, direct connection to what Congress wrote. What about the practical side? Costs.
Absolutely. The fifth category is all about that. It targets regulations where the significant costs upon private parties are not outweighed by public benefits.
The cost-benefit analysis.
Exactly. But the phrasing might suggest, a higher bar for justifying rules that cost businesses or individuals a lot.
That could definitely hit home for, say, entrepreneurs or smaller businesses, right? People trying to start something new.
For sure. And that connects to the next one, Category 6. This is about regs that might harm the national interest.
National interest is broad. What falls under that?
A whole list. Things like holding back tech innovation, slowing down infrastructure projects, which is, pretty relevant for people seeing construction or debates about it in their communities, hindering disaster response, contributing to inflation, hurting R&D, economic growth, energy production, land use, even foreign policy goals. It's quite a range.
Oh. So if a regulation is seen as like making it harder to develop new energy sources or slowing down infrastructure builds, it's potentially on the chopping block.
That seems to be the idea, yes, if it's perceived as a significant impediment in those areas.
Okay. And there was a 7th category.
Yes. The last one in Section 2 circles back specifically to business burdens. It targets regulations imposing undue burdens on small business and those that impede private enterprise and entrepreneurship.
Right, so another nod to the economic impact, especially on smaller players and startups. That's often where a lot of job growth and innovation comes from, especially for younger generations entering the workforce.
Exactly, it highlights that concern.
Okay, so constitutional issues, statutory interpretation, costs versus benefits, national interest impacts, and small business burdens. That's a lot to look for in 60 days.
It is. And the order also mentions prioritizing significant regulatory actions using the definition from an older order, Executive Order 128666.
Right, 128666. That's the standard process for reviewing major new rules, big impact ones.
Correct. So by prioritizing those, it suggests the regulations with the largest economic or societal effects are likely first in line for this DOGE review.
And then what happens? Agencies make these lists.
They submit them to OIRA, the Office of Information and Regulatory Affairs, within that 60-day window.
Okay.
And then OIRA, working with the agencies, is supposed to develop a unified regulatory agenda to actually, rescind or modify the flagged regulations.
So the 60 days is just the identification phase. The actual changes could take longer.
That's right. It sets the stage for potential action down the road.
Got it. Okay, let's move to Section 3. This deals with enforcement, right? How agencies should handle existing rules while this review is happening.
Yeah, enforcement discretion. It gives guidance on how agencies should prioritize their enforcement efforts.
Are they told to just stop enforcing things?
Not quite stop, but it says they should generally deprioritize enforcement against regulations that are flagged under those criteria we just discussed, like not based on the best reading of the law or potentially exceeding federal power.
Generally deprioritize. But there's a catch.
A big one. It emphasizes their paramount obligation to their legal duties, public safety, and the national interest.
Ah, okay. So they can ease up, but not if it risks safety or violates the law somehow. How do they decide?
Well, agency heads need to assess if ongoing enforcement aligns with the law and the administration's policy.
And if it doesn't?
If they decide, after consulting with the director of OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, that an enforcement action doesn't comply with the Constitution, laws, or policy, they can actually terminate it.
Terminate an ongoing enforcement action.
Yes, on a case-by-case basis. So this could have very direct, immediate consequences for anyone currently facing enforcement under a regulation that might now be questioned.
Interesting. So a potential shift in how rules are applied even before they're formally changed. What about new regulations? That's Section 4.
Correct. Section 4 addresses future rulemaking. It confirms agencies still follow the usual OIRA review process from Executive Order 12866.
Okay, so the standard review is still there.
But there's an extra layer now. Agency heads also have to consult early on with their designated DOGE team leads.
Ah, the people within each agency overseeing this new initiative.
Exactly. And with the OIRA administrator before proposing new rules.
So more upfront scrutiny through this new DOGE lens.
Seems like it. And critically, it states that those same 7 factors from Section 2, constitutionality, costs, innovation impacts, etc., will also be considered when evaluating new potential regulations.
On top of the existing cost-benefit analysis from 13860s.
That's how it reads. So the bar for justifying new regulations might effectively be higher, incorporating these additional checks.
Which could mean, a slower pace for new rules, or rules that are maybe more narrowly tailored. Could be significant for industries expecting changes.
Potentially, yes. A more cautious approach overall seems likely.
Okay, then Section 6 just clarifies some definitions, right? Like agency, regulation. You mentioned it includes guidance documents.
Yeah, that's important. Regulation is defined broadly to include guidance. Sometimes guiding stocks, even if not technically law, really dictate how businesses operate.
Right, they can have real teeth in practice.
Definitely. So including them expands the scope of what's under review.
And Section 7 lists exemptions, things this doesn't apply to.
Correct. Military, national security, homeland security, foreign affairs, immigration stuff. Also, internal government management, like federal employee rules.
So mainly focus on domestic economic social regulation.
That seems to be the focus, yeah. Plus, the OMB director can exempt other things, too.
Got it. And finally, Section 9 has some general clauses, like this doesn't create new lawsuits.
Right, the standard language. It says the order doesn't create any new enforceable rights for private parties against the government. You can't just sue based on this order alone.
Okay.
It also confirms it doesn't override existing agency legal authority or OMB's budget functions, and everything depends on existing law and funding availability.
Okay, so let's try and sum this up. This executive order creating the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, is basically launching a major review of existing federal regulations.
A really comprehensive review, yeah.
Using a wide set of criteria, constitutional questions, costs, economic impacts, especially on innovation and small business. And it signals a potentially tougher stance on new regulations, too.
That's a good summary. It's aimed squarely at what the order portrays as regulatory overreach or inefficiency. The goal is seemingly to reduce the regulatory burden, particularly in ways perceived to hinder economic activity or exceed statutory authority.
And for you listening, especially if you're in that 22-45 age range, thinking about your career, maybe starting a business, or just navigating the economy.
Yeah, the potential impacts are widespread. Changes driven by concerns about, say, innovation or infrastructure development or small business costs could really reshape opportunities and challenges in various sectors.
Absolutely. It's definitely something to watch. So thinking about those broad categories, technology, the economy, small business burdens, it raises a question maybe for you to think about after this. Which specific areas of regulation do you think might actually see the biggest shifts under this kind of review? And what could the ripple effects be on innovation, on the job market, on just, well, daily life for people building their futures right now?
That's the big question, isn't it? What happens when these principles meet specific rules on the ground? Definitely food for thought.
Indeed. Well, thanks for digging into this with us today on The Deep Dive.